Thus far, we have done the P, which is purpose, A, audience, C, content, and O for organization in the writing process for academic essays. So now we're going to move on to the W, or the writing voice. The first part of the writing voice we're going to talk about is the introductory paragraph. When I think about introductory paragraphs, I want to think about what are the main purposes for this. So there are three. The first of which is, one, I want to get my audience to have an understanding of what I'm talking about. If I need to kind of like give them context or set up the topic that I'm going to be writing about. Okay. In addition to that, I also want to give them some sort of hook or attention grabber that makes them want to read. Sometimes, I don't know, I'm sure most of you will attest to this. If the first couple paragraphs of a story or an article aren't all that interesting, it's real easy to put it down and walk away. So I want to grab the attention. I'm having a hard time typing today. And lastly, I want to specifically lay out what I'm going to talk about. This is why we always include the thesis statement. That should be a single quotation mark or apostrophe. Okay, so hopefully this is kind of a review of things that you have heard before when we talk about how an introductory paragraph should be structured. We use what's called the inverted pyramid. An inverted pyramid is, and the reason we use that is because if you get the image of the inverted pyramid, which is basically an upside down pyramid, you would see that it's broad or wider at the top, and it gradually gets more and more specific. So in an introductory paragraph, I don't want to start with my thesis statement because that's the most specific sentence that's going to be in the introductory paragraph. What I want to do is kind of introduce, going back up to this background information, I want to introduce the ideas that I'll be talking about or the topics that I'll be talking about in a broader or general sense. And then I'm going to get a little bit more specific with each sentence. So I'm going to probably have an introductory paragraph that is 3 to 5 sentences. Which means the first sentence is going to be very general, or not very, but more general than the thesis statement. Okay, and let me bold that. Maybe, if I can get it to highlight. There we go. So that last sentence is my thesis statement. Okay? So the first sentence is general, but the first sentence should also be an attention grabber. Okay, so that's first sentence is the attention grabber. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about some attention grabbers so you can use them. And then I'm going to ask you to try 2 different varieties of attention grabbers so you can get some practice in that. Okay, so the first type of attention grabber is a rhetorical question. So a rhetorical question by definition is when you ask a question that you don't expect an answer to. It's not meant to be answered. The purpose of a rhetorical question is to make whomever's listening to it or reading it think about what the answer would be for them. Okay? So again, it's a question that you don't necessarily expect an answer to, but you want the listener or reader to think about what a possible answer would be. Okay? That's one. Another attention grabber would be a startling statement. So a startling statement is a statement that's startling. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but you want to use a startling statement is something that kind of makes your reader or your listener take a step back and have their jaw drop a little bit and think, oh, wow, never knew that. One of the examples I like to use if I were writing an essay about the Holocaust, a startling statement that I would use would be something like, if 9/11, the events of 9/11, during which 3,000 people died, happened every day for 5.5 years, that's how many people were killed in the Holocaust. If you think about that, 5.5 years of those events happening. That's a pretty startling thought. So a startling statement is an interesting statistic or fact that most people don't know or would be surprised to learn. Okay. And then the last one we're going to talk about is a simile or a metaphor. So this is when I create a comparison to, I'm going to take my topic that I'm writing about in my essay, and I'm going to compare it to something that doesn't seem like there would be anything in common, but there is. Okay, so that's what a simile or a metaphor does. It compares two unlike things in order to point out that one thing that they have in common. Okay, so for example, if I were talking about the technology prompt, and I'm going to give you more specific examples in a second. If I were talking about the technology prompt and I was talking about how students use their devices, I might compare their devices to a set of lungs. So a lung is what's in our body to help us breathe, not anything like a phone or an iPad, except for we act like we need both of those to live, to breathe. Okay? So this is what I'm comparing two unlike things. One of which is my topic. Okay, so I'm going to show you some examples and then show you how to continue after the attention grabber to get to your thesis statement. So we look at the writing voice and we're talking about drafting paragraphs. You'll see that I have the notes here. That's what these all, all are. Now I'm just going to put that in. So the attention grabbers, remember I talked about the rhetorical question, asking a question that you won't need the answer to, but want to make your reader think about it. And using my specific thesis that I've been practicing with for you guys, the technology thesis, Have you ever looked at the screen time function on your phone to see which apps you use the most? So I'm not necessarily asking you to tell me that, although I challenge you to do that to see how much time you spend on that. I had a student who I challenged to do that last year, and they realized they spent 25 hours on TikTok in a week. So that was an entire day of their lives that they would never get back because they spent it on TikTok. So that's a good use of a rhetorical question there. A second example would be, did you know that most entry-level positions in companies require you to be able to type 65 words a minute? Again, you don't need to answer that question. You just need to think about it. I want you to think about it, and that's the whole point of an attention grabber that uses a rhetorical question. Next, I'm going to talk about the startling statement. I gave you the example about the Holocaust, but let's look at the examples I pulled or created for the technology. As of 2016, 70% of jobs require medium to high digital skills. And I paraphrased that from a source. So that's why I wanted to put that in parentheses. So you knew that I didn't just come up with that on my own. I paraphrased that from an outside source. I didn't make it up, is what I'm saying. I don't want you to make up startling statistics. The next example, Oxford Economics predicts that 75% of jobs by the year 2030 will require advanced digital skills. And you'll see in parentheses, I put the website where I got that information. So, one, that's one of the reasons why we're focusing so much on technology in our class right now. And two, that's a good example of a startling statement or statistic that I wouldn't have said 75% would require advanced digital skills. So that was something that I was surprised to learn. All right, and lastly, we have the simile or the metaphor. I already gave you this example a little bit earlier. I kind of cheated and went ahead there, okay? For many students, their smartphones feel like a second set of lungs, and they struggle to function without them. So I'm comparing lungs to their phones. And then the next one I did, for most jobs today, workers need not only a device, but the ability to use them well. Just like basketball players need more than the hoop and ball to score. So that's another one where I'm comparing basketball to using technology, which is the one I chose to develop further. So I'm going to look at this sample intro paragraph. For most aspects of life today, people need not only some sort of technological device, but also the ability to use them well, just like basketball players need more than the hoop and ball to score. I'm going to keep going here with this metaphor. I'm going to talk about dribbling, passing, defending, rebounding. Without these skills, ballers won't score, can't win, or won't even enjoy the love of the game. Just like these players, students need to learn digital skills and the devices to score, win, and enjoy life. Students must learn technology while in school with various devices to communicate with others, to learn new things, and to entertain themselves. So you notice that my last sentence there is my thesis, okay? I have my attention grabber here with my metaphor, okay? I happen to continue that metaphor into the next sentence, but you'll notice that I go from talking about basketball players in general to specific skills, and then I do the same thing with learning digital skills. So that's how our introductory paragraph is going to go. You are going to be tasked with writing two attention grabbers, and they can't be the same thing. So you're going to pick either a rhetorical question and a startling statement and a simile, or a rhetorical question and a simile. And you're going to try your hand at both and decide which one you like the best.